Hello, hello. Oh, my voice went straight away. Hello, 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 hello. Do say hello, whoever's out there. And gosh, 8 of you out there at the moment. So I'm going to say it one last time. Happy New Year, 18th of January. But we haven't spoken maybe since before Christmas. So good to see you. Pop a little comment in the live chat box if that's working for you, just to say hello so I know who's out there. That'd be really helpful. So what we're going to do for the next hour or so is to, oh, somebody's gone straight away. What we're going to do for the next hour or so is to go through, I want your questions that we can bounce off. We're going to talk about dowsing. We're going to talk about the subtle realms. We're going to talk about, oh, there we go. Great, great, great. Hello, Sean. Hello, Sally. Hello, Steve. Good to see you. Going to talk about all the sort of things. David, hello. Nancy, hello, hello. It seems like a lifetime ago. It probably was a completely different timeline ago, I would say, David. But yes, it does seem like a long time ago since we were last here. So I'll say the usual. It's nice to see the regular faces, the regular names there. I'll say the usual just for those that might be watching this on playback, and that is that this is very much meandering chit-chat. So it is led by your questions, and those of you that keep returning session after session, which is absolutely lovely, please do pile away with the questions. Just chuck them in anytime you want, and we'll come back round to them if we don't cover them off straight away. So what I thought we would sort of move on from, we kind of use as a launching pad yet again for this particular session. Hello, that's nice to see you, new person there. Is really just touch on spirit of place again. You know, it's a nice thing to be working with in so many senses, because it touches on our whole relationship to reality, really. Lisa, hello. Well, I think you're new too. I don't know, I'm not sure. Wonderful. Touches on this whole aspect of reality and our relationship to it. And we are, I think we're all very, very aware of manifesting and the way that we interact with the world around us. But it's, spirit of place kind of reflects that as well, because you can really get alongside where you are and the place where you live and the places where even members of your family live. If you look at your parents' house, for example, if they're still with us in this dimension, you can see the way that their environment kind of lifts up some of the themes that they hold dear and that you have adopted probably as an offspring of theirs. Anyway, that's going off on a little bit of a tangent. You too, excellent, good. I hope you enjoy it. Do throw in a question, Lisa. I'm going to just call you Lisa from now on, I think, far easier. Just to say, as we start this hour, that obviously if you're picking this up on playback and you don't like the live meandering nature of it all, because it is very stream of consciousness, then have a look on the edited highlights playlist, because I do try to edit these together and just get the nuggets out there, what nuggets there are. JF, good man, hello, good to see you. Kenny Chris, hello, nice to see you too. Yeah, happy New Year to everybody. So I was talking to somebody just the other day, and just to say we may have a fair amount of buffering on this today, because I literally have got a time delay between my own image here on the screen and what's happening in reality. So if you're getting buffering, just pop buffering in the chat so that I know what's going on. Hello, Lonnie Louise, excellent. Kansas City, very good. Thank you for joining us. So so technical difficulties, we will overcome those. Now what I was saying was that I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're a lovely person, and they were saying how wonderful it is to live the life where all these synchronicities pop up and the universe answers the messages. You ask a question and the universe gives you a message back, and it's obvious that that's a message back in response to the question. And I was like, yeah, it is. It's absolutely brilliant. It's amazing. I mean, this is what I was feeling inside. I don't think I actually expressed that. I think I went quite blank because I was really feeling like, well, yeah, that's all good stuff to actually experience and to really get to grips with and really have fun with and enjoy and realize your potential as the human being that you really are, not the human being that we have been led to believe, right? So it's all, so in a way, what I was thinking was, well, yeah, all of the signs and the manifesting process, hello, Tom, nice to see you. Glad you made it. Is all a fantastic step, but it isn't the end destination. You know, if we just want to be happy with our ability to manifest things and to create the life that we want and that intentional living, then that's okay. But to me, that's not the end goal. That's not the end step. I mean, I'm still, you know, work in progress. And I think that, you know, I go through phases like everybody else of being really in touch and in the flow and not. But the goal is not to see our messages created in the reality that we live in. It's to actually accept that that happens. Just accept that that happens. Hello, Benjamin plus 10. Haven't heard from you for a long time. Ellen, hello. So just accept that these things happen. This is part of what life is about, right? And obviously when it starts and when it becomes very obvious, then it is quite exhilarating and exciting. So we accept, what I'm saying is accept it all, accept that it's part of the process of living and being alive, and be joyous and grateful when you see them, but just accept that that's thank you very much. Just say thank you to the management for reflecting back, giving you an answer, responding to your presence. But let's move beyond that, you know, let's kind of step on from that and develop that really close relationship, which really is about self-analysis. It's about pulling open the cupboard doors and saying, gosh, really, do I behave like that? Oh, geez. And that could be tough. So what's spirit of place got to do with that? Well, spirit of place really for me encapsulates, I'd better qualify what I mean by spirit of place because some of you won't. Dixie, good heavens. Well done. Can't stay, but good to see you. Okay. Let us know how your little one's doing. Just drop it in the chit chat. I'm sure other people would like to know as well. I hope you can stay just for long enough to let us know that. Spirit of place. What do I mean by spirit of place? Well, yeah, I was going to be unkind and ask if anybody any of the regulars would like to just write in what spirit of place means to them or what I mean by it, but I won't do that. Okay, so many of you will know that my life changed radically and my spiritual awakening, if we want to call it that in that pretentious way, started because I moved into a house with my family and we encountered the spirit of a deceased person that was living there. And they, over time, they announced themselves as the guardian space. So in other words, every single house, I now realize, has a guardian energy aspect. They contribute to the feeling of the house or the place, the location. Let's say it's a location, because sometimes the guardian energy of a sacred site, for example, which we'll talk about in a second, contributes to the feeling of the actual sacred site. Now, what does this mean? So what I mean is that there is a guardian energy, a personality, like a human being, but obviously not a human being because they're non-physical, in every single sacred site, but equally every single house has one. There is a video that I did years ago where I described that every single house has 3 guardian aspects. One of them is this guardian energy personality. And I tend to define this guardian energy personality as being the energy force, and I will maintain energy force that is in charge, so has an influence upon the space in which we live. Now by that I mean literally this space in which we live. We're 3-dimensional beings, but this quantum field of existence in which we live, but defined, if you can define a space in the quantum realm, I'm not sure entirely whether you can, but within our perception, the house has a guardian aspect that controls that. No, it doesn't control, it has an influence upon that space, right? That's one of them. Then there's the fabric of the house itself, so the physical structure, right? There's that you can talk to that. You can talk to a house. You can talk like you could talk to a plant, or you can talk to a car. Any of that, and you can also have the spirit of the land, and that the spirit of the land is the energy that has an influence upon the spirit of that space in which the house is built. Come to your point in a second, Noah. Just a sec. I thought it would be Dixie. I can't remember if it was he or she, but I thought the little one would be nearly a year. Fantastic. Okay. So there are those three guardian aspects. Now, when I talk about the spirit of place, when I talk about the spirit of place as an aspect, like titling this live as Dowsing and the Spirit of Place, I really mean the guardian energy personality, but I actually, in my interpretation of it, I'm also including some of those aspects, including the spirit of the land a little bit in that, so that we can really connect to the land and the space. But we can do so through a personality if we're that way inclined. Let me just come back to this in a second. I just want to pick up Noah's question. So you've been practicing on the pendulum for about 4 months, almost daily, not getting consistency. How long will it take me to get them right? That's okay. No, that's fine. Going off topic is absolutely no problem at all, Noah. We kind of circle round, and this is the nature of the meandering chit chat. That question is as broad as it is long. It's a piece of string. How long will it take to get consistency? It varies completely and utterly from one person to another, but don't be disheartened by the fact that at the moment you're not getting consistent results, because when you start dowsing, you don't, and you do need to keep practicing. So you're aware of that. 4 months almost daily, that's very good. One of the things is, hi Jenny, good to see you. One of the things is that don't do yourself down. Don't. Okay, I think in the videos, the playlist of Learn to Douse videos or the pendulum dowsing videos, I say this quite a lot. Don't ask the same question immediately twice. That's one thing, right? Because if you ask me a question, am I sitting down, and it says no, and then you say, well, straight away, am I sitting down? It says yes. That's always going to happen. For some reason, you're always going to get the opposite response the second time if you ask a question immediately on top of the first one. So don't doubt it. Go with your first response. And the other thing is trust, faith. That's all I can say. Just keep going. Maybe change what you're dowsing, and have a look into dowsing new areas if you're getting a bit tired with one thing, and see how the pendulum responds, and start to really, while you're doing this amount of practice, do it with a good heart, obviously, which you probably are, but do it joyfully, and do it with a very mindful awareness of what's going on inside. Because what you'll start to see is that actually you get a dowsing response before you get a response on the pendulum. And that is valid. So don't say to yourself, oh no, hang on, oh, I've got this in my head before this responded, right? Look for that dowsing response in yourself in a relaxed way, and that will be valid, okay? Because it's about intuition, it's about your natural process of being able to assimilate information and bring stuff forward from the subconscious, and your unconscious movements of your hand. It's completely unconscious. That affects the actual pendulum or the rods. Okay, Noah, hopefully that's all right. Dixie, good, yes, one here. Kitty Chris, confluence of fields that we live in move through constantly on this ancient biomagnetic vibratory construction of a planet. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's cool. JF, yep, that's the video. Thank you very much for digging that one out. Sean, yes, good. Yes, very good point, Sean. Wonderful, thank you for that. Wow, hello. Beam up now. Yeah, great. Good. Excellent. I couldn't read your name there to start with. Beam up now. Yeah, hi. Good to see you. Good. Okay, yeah, keep at it, Noah. Yeah, okay, so where were we? Talking about the spirit of place, sacred sites. So Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the essence of all of this is to really step into your full self, and your full self is encompassing and embracing that aspect of you that is the spiritual self. And so sometimes, you know, it could, Stevie, hello. Sometimes it can be put across in very pompous terms or very exclusive and excluding terms, so that people feel like, oh, well, I can't have a spiritual self. That person's special. They're doing amazing things, and the way that that person puts it across is kind of excluding others, because their ego feeds on that. But we don't do that. What we want to do is to actually encourage you all to understand, encourage us all to understand that our potential and the way that we work with this seeming external reality is infinitely variable. The external reality is malleable, and that is what we endeavor to work on. And dowsing is the very first step, really, as far as I'm concerned, in actually getting to grips with the energies and working with it. Okay, and it's a very valid thing. Oh, actually, the last thing I know is also Nick. Hello. The other thing is, Noah. What was I going to say? I just called Nick's name and that completely threw me. Sorry, I'll have to come back to that. Can't remember what that was. Sorry, folks. Temporary hiatus while I just tried to think what that was I was going to say. No, it's gone. No, it's gone. Anyway, so one of the things to bear in mind as these wonderful, human beings that are completely capable of stepping into both worlds and existing in both worlds, in other words, in the spirit world and in the physical form at the same time, because that's what we do. Our inner universe is the one that connects wonderfully to the spiritual realm, and obviously here we are in physical form. One of the things is that for the inner universe, time is irrelevant. When we communicate with the management and we have information coming through from the management, they are coming down to us really, really closely into our three-dimensional realm where we experience linear time. But for them, if you imagine them going back on a kind of a line back away from this point of awareness of what we are, then linear time doesn't exist. And there are aspects that you might think back to your younger days, to your childhood, where actually you can look back on those things. And these are positive things. These are not trauma that we quite often talk about. This is positive stuff. And you can see that actually some of that positive stuff is being very much echoed in the lives that you are leading in adulthood. Well, I mean, obviously that sounds like that's, well, of course it is. But let me give you an example. There's a book, and I think I may have mentioned this book before, it's written by a guy called James Hillman. This is James Hillman, Hillman. And this book is called The Soul's Code. Now, I'm pretty sure he's a psychotherapist or something like that. He's a psychologist or something, one of those, people that works with the mind. But he also comes at all of his writing and his research from the spiritual point of view. And the soul's code is about how there are aspects of the developed human being, the adult, to be found very clearly and reflected in the actions and the behaviors of the child. Let me just check on here. Yeah, okay. Let me just pause James Hillman for a second. Kitty Chris, I'm glad you enjoyed that. The newscaster fella, the Clive Anderson over here, he's quite well known. He's not on TV so much as he used to be, but he's quite well known, and he's a bit of a comedian. He's actually professionally a barrister, but so it was quite interesting seeing him experience the rods for the first time. And I believe that Rick Stein, who is a British chef but a TV celebrity as well, I believe in last week's program. Hello, Lena. Good to see you. that Rick Stein actually also went to a sacred site in Cornwall, actually, and experienced a similar sort of thing. So if I can find that, I will also pop it on there as well. Margie, nice to see you. So we were talking about James Hillman and the fact that the management, because this is the way that I see it, the management tends to sort of seed aspects of the adult character in the child and the child's behavior, right? Now, one thing for me that demonstrates this, and you have to excuse me, this is not ego-centered. When I talk about stories or experiences that I've had, it's purely to illustrate, and you know that what I'm doing is using my experience to help you and enable you to see associations in a similar way. So although I wasn't a child, I was probably in my early teens when this happened. And I'm not sure that I've mentioned this before on the lives. But both my brother and I were what you might call late developers, right? So I'm thinking that I was around about 14 years old. Now, for many 14-year-olds, especially streetwise 14-year-olds, they would be like, you know, they would have seen life. My brother, who's 2 years older than me, and I weren't really like that. You might be surprised to learn. We weren't like that. And we used to go on holiday with our parents. So even at 14, I was on holiday with my parents. And this particular, and maybe I have mentioned this on here before, but I'm going to tell you anyway again. This particular trip was over to the Forest of Dean, where my aunt lived at the time. And in fact, I'm not even sure whether my aunt, who's amongst the chat, but I won't name her, I'm not even sure whether she was there, whether we were visiting or whether she was away, and we were just having a holiday there. But the point is, we had this trip to Gloucester Cathedral. So my mum and dad, being quite religious, they, Christians, and they like going around these places. Steve, my brother, and I were basically just wandering around, bored to tears at this point. So you can imagine the 14-year-old boy in Gloucester Cathedral. But what I did was I was wandering around on my own at that point, and I just stumbled over to a bookstall, leaflets about the cathedral and leaflets about the area, around Gloucestershire and all this sort of stuff. It wasn't terribly interesting, but what was really interesting was that I realized that as I was standing in one particular position at this bookstall, that I felt a complete and utter peace, complete blissful peace, amazing feeling of tranquility. And I stepped a couple of steps over to the right, and that, excellent, Brandon, well done, you're from Gloucester. So, hello, Wendy. And so as I stepped a few paces to the right, that feeling of peace and that blissful feeling, euphoric bliss, or really amazing peace, went away. Okay, this is interesting. And stepped back again, and there it was. And I mean, many of you will realize what was happening, because fundamentally I was in an earth energy line when I was experiencing that blissful feeling of peace. And as I stepped away from it, of course, I was stepping out of the intensity of it. But so that memory of that peace from 14 years old, so that would have been, I was born in 62, so 72, 76-ish, is that right? I don't know, my math is terrible. So from 76 through to around about 1998, so nothing, I had no other experience like that in my life. Hey, Deneen, good to see you, well done, glad you made it. No other experience like that in my life until we moved into that house in the Forest of Dean, and in the room above, the very dark room, I'll have to tell some of you that don't know about this, we moved into a house in the Forest of Dean in 1998. It was a big old Georgian, sort of Victorian Georgian townhouse, big old place. And out the back of it, there were two rooms, one above the other. The one downstairs was really derelict, and the one at the top had been used as a bit of a workshop. And that room at the top, I could step into that space and feel exactly like I did on that day when I was 14 years old in Gloucester Cathedral. And that in itself was really amazing. And that was before, Dave Dan, fantastic, from Mississippi. Yeah, good man. So that feeling in itself was extraordinary, because I realized going into that room, when I felt that same blissful peace upstairs, we won't talk about downstairs for the moment, but upstairs in where the light was, it took me right back, boom, straight back into that 14-year-old boy in Gloucester Cathedral. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. This is only the second time I felt this. And at that time, I had no idea about all of this stuff. But what I'm getting at is that these little instances when we're younger are sort of planted by the management. And this is the sort of thing that James Hillman talks about in his book, The Soul's Code. It's an old book, worth getting hold of, though, if you're interested in this sort of thing, about the way that these sort of little signposts are dropped in early days. And like I say, these are things that are not trauma, they're not detrimental things to us, or rather, should we say, they're not character forming. They are simply these little things that get lodged in the memory and you think, oh yeah, don't know what that was about, but that's something. And then later, obviously, especially when you become quite interested in the spirituality of life, you see their relevance and their purpose. And for me, obviously, that feeling in that house and linking it back to that day in Gloucester Cathedral, it when I realised that we've got, you know, earth energy lines crossing in the back, blah 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 blah, it made complete sense, and all the cards kind of lined up. So when we talk about working with the management and allowing our the manifesting process to slot into place and just accept that that's what's happening, and remember, when we remember that everything that we experience has the hand of the management in it. For those of you that don't know, Holly, hello. Oh, Mere Avebury, fantastic. One of my favorite places. Remember, everything we experience has the hand of the management in it. It just depends how much they're fiddling and manipulating what we experience. But everything we have has the hand of the management in it, because we are always connected to our soul's selves, which goes back through the spiritual line up to them. And that in itself is, really significant. So, any questions? Keep firing them away. Do carry on. So, one of the things about this manifesting, and this brings us a bit more around the spirit of place. Although I have to say, there's also a relevance to spirit of place of Gloucester Cathedral before we move on, because Gloucester Cathedral was actually one of the locations that they filmed Harry Potter in. So I just thought it was quite funny. It's quite nice to have that kind of link with movies, sort of from my background, both and in that sort of spiritual experience. Very tenuous link, though. Not really the sort of thing that I'm kind of relating to the spirit of place, really. But years later, when I was working on that, on making the video program with Hamish Miller, The Spirit of the Serpent, which I talk about a lot. And JF, if you're able to, if you're still there with us, if you can find a link just to part 1 of The Spirit of the Serpent, because some of the more recent newcomers might not have seen that, and it's definitely worth a look to find out more about earth energy and about dowsing earth energy. So when I was trying to decide which sacred site in Cornwall I was going to do this filming with Hamish at. Hamish and I spent a day, Hamish Miller, this is my mentor. We spent a day driving around about 7 or so different stone circles on Penwith and a little bit up country. And after that, I went down to do some more research around the one that we'd chosen. The one that we'd chosen was a circle called the Merry Maidens, which is just the other side of Penzance in Cornwall, which is quite, if you remember what Britain looks like, and right down in the southwest, there's pointy bit, and so just saying this for the Americans and others, it's right down there in the corner. And what I needed to do on this particular day was I needed to seal off 2 things. One was I needed to find the person that owned this particular field that the Merry Maidens' ancient standing stones were sitting in, because I needed to get permission to allow us to film there for 3 days. And the other thing was that I wanted ideally to have a group of people that I could just speak to, and to have them lined up and have them, in the course of these 3 days scheduled in for those 3, so that I could talk to them. That was it, outside of the group that were doing the metaphysical work in the circle. Okay, that's what we were filming mostly, but I wanted some other people involved and get some feedback. So I drove down with my cameraman, one of the cameramen that I was going to work with on the project. Excuse me. Thank you, Ronan. Good to see you. I drove down one day to the Merry Maidens, all the way from where I was living at the time, which actually at that time was in Gloucestershire. So it's a couple of 100 miles nearly. And I had no answer to either of those questions. I had no idea who owned the field. I had no idea how I was going to meet a group of people, but I'd asked the management. I'd said, look, I'm going to go down there on Saturday. Could you please provide the answers for me? So I went down there with Gary. And thank you, JF. Great, excellent. And Gary, my cameraman, he was doing some stuff with just getting some shots and lining up and thinking about angles and all this sort of thing, the things that cameramen do. And I was just chilling out in the stone circle. At that time, I was dowsing, obviously. And I was chilling out next to one of the stones there. And I just that's right, I remember, was really kind of zoning out, letting Gary get on with his stuff. And I remember just glancing to my left at the stones that kind of went round in the circle from that point. And as I looked, I felt my blood sugars in my body just drop suddenly, which is like a feeling of sickness. It's something that used to happen at the time. But the really interesting thing was that these stones kind of jumped forward. They went kind of 1, 2, and all of them just kind of jumped like shift. You know what it's like? It was like going over points at a junction on the old clattery railways, where the train would go and take up a new line. And that's what these stones. So in my vision, they went and they literally moved. And I was like, whoa, that's amazing. And then I just turned to Gary to see what he was doing. But then in the corner of the field, right down in the corner, it was good few hundred yards away. There was a little figure. A van pulled up and a little figure got out. And I knew straight away that was the owner of the field. So I got up and said to Gary, oh, sorry, I'll be back in a minute, and ran down the field to this guy who was just fiddling about with the gate, and said, introduced myself, said, sorry, look, do you own this place? And yeah, he did. That was the owner. So the management had manifested this meeting. And that was brilliant, right? I mean, that was fabulous. But it was also weird the way that these stones jumped. But that was like the management pulling my awareness from one state of being in the physicality into another one. So it literally was like moving timelines, but seeing it happen and feeling it happen as well. So the owner was very open to us to filming there for 3 days, partly because we were going to pay him, but so that went really, really well. But if you remember, what I said was I was going to go, hello Keith, good to see you. What I'd said was I'd said to the management I was going to go down there because the other thing that I wanted to sort out was to have a group of people that I could access and set up and line up to be available at a certain time over those 3 days, so I could do some interviews with them, very casual interviews. Like I say, these are people that weren't involved in the actual program front of camera. So once I'd spoken to this owner, I came back up the field. Gary was still there going, well, that was amazing. Who was that? And I said, explained it and all of that. And we were having that conversation, and this is literally just one after the other. And a little minibus drew up, and a whole bunch of people got out and clambered up the field and started using dowsing rods, actually, and pendulums around the stones. And Gary and I were just sort of standing there watching them. And I thought, well, there's a group of people, so let me go and ask somebody what it's all about. And they turned out to be a local paranormal group. And the guy that was in charge said, yeah, we'll be really up for having a chat with you, Yeah, we've got various bits of knowledge about these stones and other things. And so I thought, well, that's great. But, and this is the point, is that actually in subsequent conversations with that group, it all went a bit pear-shaped in terms of what I wanted wasn't what they wanted, and they also all wanted paying, because I mean, I was doing this I was paying the landowner out of my pocket because I was making this program as a promotion, promotional thing, trying to pitch the idea to broadcasters. So I was paying for everything. So, which is an expensive. Don't ever do it. It's an expensive way to live. So really, this relationship with these people from the paranormal group really turned a bit like, oh no, that's not going to work for us. So we abandoned it, and I gave up on that aspect of the video production. But what I'm getting at is the management provided absolutely exactly the two things that I'd asked for, and I'd gone down there with the faith and the trust and the confidence and all that stuff that of course, yes, the management will provide. They will sort them out. But you see, when we live in that one foot in each world, and we're just expecting the things to happen that we want to happen, and yeah, they did happen, but one of them was good, which was the landowner, and one of them was not so good, which was the paranormal group. But it was only not so good further in time away from the actual point of manifesting. So what I'm sort of saying is, don't think that everything that is manifested for you, that comes to you in life, is necessarily absolutely spot on and going to be perfect for the entire thing that you want it to happen for. So it does absolutely reflect the be careful what you wish for. But this is about us as our creative selves living in harmony and creating the world that we want. The world that we want. But we don't do it just in isolation. Okay? And this is, of course, is the point. You will all have recognized this and you'll all be aware of this. We don't do it in isolation. We do it in association, and sometimes with more guidance than others from the management. And they are the architects. They are the major creators. We are the co-creators. And the mechanism is earth energy. And we are the co-creators. So we've got the main creators, we've got the mechanism, which is earth energy, and we are the inputs. We are the kindergarten creative beings. Now, the interesting thing is about earth energy, and if you remember what I said at the start about spirit of place, guardian energy aspects being a part of that earth energy. Earth energy itself appears to have a certain sentience. Oh, that's a tricky word to use. A certain awareness of, it certainly has an awareness of the information that goes into it and is carried away to wherever the mechanism of creation is. Now I'm talking about creation here. I'm not a creationist. I don't actually know what the sort of spiritual philosophy of creationism is. I still maintain, I'm not going to get caught up in religion, but I still think of myself as a Christian. But the process of this reality in which we exist is constantly being created. Now, it's okay, so it's not just about sitting and saying, well, I know some of you are going, yeah, we know this, we know this. What are you talking about this for again? And the reason I'm talking about it again is because sometimes people think they know it, and they forget, and we forget all the time anyway. But think back to me sitting there in the Merry Maidens and watching those stones jump, watching those stones walk forward, step forward in that way of being shifted across timelines. That's, and I'm not saying it's special for me, I'm saying that is the process of creation in place. It is a process of shifting the awareness of the individual person, changing the seeming external environment so that something else is in that external environment. So with health and wellness, then what we're changing is the circumstance, of what we're asking to be changed is the circumstance of the individual person that we're working for in their environment. So they are the house, the land, the energy in which that person is living is seen as the container, and they are the contained, if you like, within that space. So we're asking the management spirit to work on that external energy. What they're actually working on, of course, is the individual co-creation, the individual concept of the reality in which they live. Okay. Excellent. Yes, do that, Wendy. What's the weather like down there at the moment? You don't want to get out now. Yeah. I mean, Kinney Chris, it's a sort of it's an interesting point, Ronan, whether it's whether they're there and we move into them, which actually is a very good way of thinking about it, because that is exactly the way to think about it, because this is what I've talked about, is that we are that point of awareness, and we do absolutely just shift around and go into the reality that is there, and there we are, we're over in that bit. Let me come back to Kinney Chris. Do you cleanse, consecrate your pendulums, dowsing rods somehow? Yeah, I mean, let me think back. I was going to say, let me just take that back a second or two. We used to, in the old house, the Forest of Dean house, the one that I was telling you about, we used to have big crystals in there, like for feng shui purposes and things. And I would take them out and put them in salt overnight, and it'd be lovely if there was a full moon and all this sort of stuff. And so I'd do that as a sort of ritual to cleanse those crystals. Direct answer to your question is, yeah, I do. When I work with when I get this, in fact, every now and again, I should cleanse this. I haven't done it for a little while, but I would do it just with intent. I would just ask upstairs, because that really is strong enough. That's powerful enough, just to ask upstairs to cleanse and clear and protect and take away any detrimental energy that's been associated with this pendulum from this point, from the past, so that it is useful and beneficial for all who it is used for in the future. Something like that. Okay, and that will do it. When you get a new pendulum that's fresh from its maker, it's been tumbled and polished and all that sort of stuff. So some people like to apologize to it for its journey to get to you, but you can certainly welcome it, treat it like a pet. I have suggested to some people that are not getting on terribly well with their pendulums in terms of getting good, consistent results. Sorry, I've forgotten your name. Nawa might want to do this, is that you pop it under your pillow at night for a few nights. Sleep with it. Okay, get to know it a bit more. With the rods as well, yeah, I would do that. Same thing. Cleanse them every now and again. Yeah, especially if you're getting a weird and wacky result, answers. Yeah. So all of that chit chat about the way that we interact with our reality, and reality is formed around us, and we pop into a new one. It's all about a question of balance, isn't it? It's all about balance, because, as I say, not necessarily everything that manifests for us is necessarily ideal for the long run, the long course. Just take it one step at a time, and always exercise this relationship with the world around you, this external environment, i.e. the management, as a conversation. In the same way as I've mentioned a couple of times recently on Facebook to people about dowsing is a two-stage process. You ask the question and you get a result. It's no good just wandering around. Most of you will know this. No good just wandering around with a pendulum or with rods, not having asked the question. That's just wallying about. So dowsing is a really good way of getting information, but you have to ask a specific question and get, therefore, a specific answer. And our existence, our lives can be seen in exactly the same way of this two-step process. We ask a question, we get a response. We can live that by setting an intention and then seeing what responds, what happens as a result. But we're doing that all the time anyway. We are doing that all the time anyway, even when we haven't set the intention, when we're just going about our lives. Earth energy, which is around us all the time, everywhere, because it's connected to, if not, is the actual 0 point field. It's at that level of creative potential. So it's always picking out what we are subconsciously emitting, right? So our reality is always being created around us, or we are always experiencing a new reality in alignment with what we are resonating at, what we're thinking about, what we're doing. So when people like me talk about creating and manifesting things, and I talked about those two specific examples, that's deliberate manifesting. That's deliberately saying, right, please, I'd love to be able to get the answer to these questions. Can you sort it for me? I will go and expect the answers to be there. That's deliberate. But all the other time, let's say during that day, for example, when I went down, one of those years ago down to Cornwall, I would have been emitting all sorts of other desires and wishes that Earth energy was picking up and saying, really, you want that? Oh, okay. And then off you go. So we must never forget that is the constant process. And this is why we are, this path is a one of being in balance and being aware, because as you do more work and more work and more work, then actually you find that the issues that have been dragging your energy down to a lower vibration, they no longer serve you. You may well have lived for decades with knowing that these things don't serve you, but you just let them go. They just go, because the more you actually are in harmony and in that joyous energy, and in the stepping through your life one step, and then you respond to what the management does, and then you take another step and you respond to what the management does, and you're in harmony with the management like that, in that spiritual sense. Horrible word, isn't it? In that sense of being, then you are more you. You're the real you that you were and you agreed to be before you even came into a physical dimension, into the physical form. Come on, guys, you must have some questions on all of this stuff. What do you think? Does it make sense? Or am I repeating so much stuff of what we've talked about before that you're thinking, is he going to talk about something new? Give me some feedback. That'd be great. The aspect of Earth energy is that, it's there picking up all of this information all the time, or everything that we're emitting all the time. Okay. Oh, yeah, okay, Lisa, right. Okay, I'll come to that. Okay. Positive intentions. Nice. Good. Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody. So, positive intentions. Actually, if you're in the USA, not sure if you are. Okay. If you're in the USA, positive intentions today, right? If you're in the USA, then just simply work on your own energy, your own awareness, your own actions, the things that are happening for you in your own world. Don't get too bogged down in worrying about the others out there, because the others out there are actually in circumstances which are appropriate for them. I know that sounds terrible. You know, we've had people die over there in the States. You're in Maine, right? Okay, Maine's fabulous. Okay, just keep working on yourself, because what will happen is if you get to for the moment, just keep working on yourself, because if you get too bogged down in the okay, let me rewind. If you'd been involved in that assault, let's call it an assault on the White House, you would have been in the action. So you would have been adrenalized, you would have been fighting, you would have been excited, you would have been fighting for your cause. Those themes that I've just expressed there, you'd have been fighting for your cause, you would have been fighting for your beliefs, you would have been fighting. These are very different emotional themes than the ones that you are probably actually going through in your own life as a co-creative being. Positive intentions today, right? You're probably a very sensitive person, I'm assuming. I'm making some assumptions here, and you are dearly wishing for a peaceful United States of America and peace for everybody and all this sort of thing, which is a very different kettle of fish to somebody that would have gone charging through the White House. So the individual that goes charging through the White House is dealing with a completely set of different themes in their energy body than you are. So all you can do is actually recognize your own peace, balance, and harmony and work on that, because what you'll find is that somewhere within your energy field, there's a little aspect, a little tiny little theme that reflects something of this other bigger, major, aggressive action that's going on over here. And that little tiny little reflection of it could be trauma, it could be something like that in the energy field, is a reflection of that, and it ripples out through, and there it is manifested out in your wider perception, but you're not the one that's deliberately out there causing the grief. So you come back and do the spiritual foundation work, which is to work on yourself and then watch the world change around you. Okay. I invited your questions, and I don't want to lose out on the questions that are all here. So okay, Lisa, remind me, I'll try and come back round to tell you about the room downstairs in the old house. Yeah, we pay attention to our thoughts, absolutely. How do you feel about putting energy into an object for a certain purpose, such as house protection or something else? How do you feel about putting energy into an object for a certain purpose, such as house protection or something else? So, Wendy, do you mean like, for example, if I pick up this is an object. That is actually an image, a reproduction thing of Archangel Michael. I have that on my desk. I have that actually just because of the Archangel Michael energy of protection, but I have it on my desk, and sometimes it gets placed on floor plans when I'm working on them. I use that. I have not intentioned it for protection for the house, but I know that the image of St. Michael will act as a protection in itself anyway. I haven't got a problem if you want to either, or if people want to either use images, sacred symbols. We were talking about sacred symbols the other day in the house healing course. But equally, if you want to intention something else, what have I got around here? Well, a large lump of stone. That could be intended. I could put intention in that for something and put it somewhere else. And then what you're into is ceremony, ritual. So that is using in a very deliberate way, your co-creative abilities in a very specific and purposeful manner. That's what ritual and ceremony is. Yeah, of course, absolutely. And especially if you, I can't remember, Wendy, whether you get involved in plant essences, producing plant essences and things, but that for the genuine article, which if you do, then I'm sure what you do is genuine. You know what I mean? I'm digging a hole here, but you know what I'm getting at. You would invite those spirits in and to work their magic in the space and associate with the physical thing that you're working with. And that you just want to you know, the only thing that I say about when you're working with spirits like that, and spirit energy of plants or spirit energy of elementals, is just to make sure that they, elementals in particular, can get back out again. Don't just leave them hanging. You know, if you're going to open a sacred space in which to work and create, then, like I said before, close it off again, and make sure that everything, it's not body, everything, every aspect that's come into that space is happily away and happily in the right place. Radu, that's a really good question. Yeah, well, it's not going to be a fear as such. Fear is a very strong word in that, but most people think that they're doing something wrong when dowsing, and really that relates back to dear old Noah's question earlier on about Noah's having trouble with getting consistent results. You may be having trouble getting consistent results, and the only way to work on it, great question by the way, is to actually keep the practice going. And if you can listen back to the early part of the live, then there's some tips there about how to do that and how to maintain that, and just keep practicing, because what you want to do is to start to build the confidence in it. Okay, and that's really the only way, is to start with the simple things. I mean, some people start with tossing a coin and seeing whether it's heads or tails, and predicting, dowsing, whether it's going to be heads or tails. I never did that. It didn't feel right for me. But you know, work on it. You might like to do that, or just keep asking questions and see. And what will happen over time is the more you practice, you will find that your results get more consistently correct and in line. And then one day you'll start to get dowsing responses that are accurate, but they're completely different to what you expected to get. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, Keith, actually, see, yes, stop dividing each other and quell all the hate. Well, yeah, I mean, the hatred is something that caused division amongst people, and for sure there's a certain amount of deliberate stoking of the fires to create division amongst people, because divide and conquer. You know, governments govern through techniques of mass control, and that's one of them. One of the big ones, as dear old Mr. David Icke would attest, for sure. Yeah, Nick, the standing stones moving forward, that was like moving realities to be in the one that had, for me, to be in the one that had the farmer. Oh, buffering, I think. So let me say that again. Nick, I got that impression of the standing stones moving forward, and actually I think this is where people sometimes have, you know, the mysticism around sacred sites is that the stones move. And I think literally that's what I experienced, was the stones walked, because that's what they look like. But what I think was happening was that I was in one reality where the farmer wasn't present, and what the management did was go shifted me along to the reality that had the farmer oiking up in his van. That's what I think happened. Okay, so that in that sense is that manifestation process. But like somebody said earlier on, not so much about creating, suddenly bubbling this environment that we then step into, but more adjusting our awareness to drop into the already created environment. Because in that spiritual sense, everything is there, everything is one, everything is timeless, everything exists. Yes, exactly, Benjamin plus 10. Excellent. It's a lovely site. If you ever come back over here again, Keith, you must go to the Merry Maidens. If you didn't go there, maybe you went there before, perhaps. It's one of my favorites. There's the Merry Maidens. Oh, I know, I must answer that one. There's the Merry Maidens, Avebury, of course, which is awesome, and the Hurlers. The Hurlers was an interesting one. On that day that I was doing the recce's, doing the research with Hamish Miller, I was actually fortunate enough at the time to be, as we approached every single stone circle, I heard a wave of male voices, primarily male voices, saying welcome. So every time we just got into the very periphery of every stone circle, sacred site, you'll find there's some energy lines around the outside, which actually, if you look at the recent upload a very short little upload which features Clive Anderson from Mystic Britain. He actually is measuring some of the very outer circular energy lines around the stone circle. What was I saying? Yeah, when you approach a stone circle and you're in the right frame of mind and you're expecting that connection to the management, and you ask permission to enter that stone circle, you will, in most likelihood, actually hear disembodied voices. If you're at all clairaudient, you will hear waves and waves of welcome as you step into that space, as you're invited into that space. And I heard those on that day. I was hearing them, and I think it was because I was my energy was combining with Hamish's. So as we approached these circles, it was welcome, welcome, like waves crashing on a beach. And the hurlers we went to, and the voices said, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. And I had never been there in my life, but I must have been there in a previous life. So that was an amazing experience. Anyway, if that's where he's running his course, I have said I'm willing to talk on that if it goes ahead. Maybe I might be there. I've said I'll venture down this year. No, not necessarily, Ronan. Coronavirus can be regarded actually as a healing process. I know it seems maybe bizarre, and for those people that are affected by it, you see, the thing is that if you look at everything that happens in the world, in this reality, from the spiritual perspective, from a being that is eternal, and you are experiencing one lifetime of that eternal process that is, again, like a wave on a beach, never ending. You come back as one wave, you go through it, you dissolve away, you come back as another one, you could dissolve, blah, 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 right? So death becomes something that is not so significant. What happens, of course, is that everybody still is grieving about people that die, and the process of dying can be, certainly in the early stages, a very upsetting and painful process, full of fear. But actually, I think what most people that work in respite homes, what are they called? Those places, not only hospitals, but also where people tend to spend their last days. Nurses and people like that spend the last hours with people tend to see and to state that actually the very last phase of the physical being tends to actually, they go into a state of acceptance and peace. So that the actual process of the actual passing is not a painful process. Nature, the process itself is very clever, but it is a very time-consuming process. So what I'm saying is, Ronan, is that don't look at corona as being something to be feared. Just look after yourself, look after your own health. Don't be silly about it. Don't think, it doesn't matter, because who wants to? I don't want to die. I don't want to go anywhere. I've got things to do here. I don't want to die at the moment. I might, hopefully, when I'm older. But care homes, yes. Thank you, David. Thank you. But so really, what this path that you are on, because you're here, you would eventually get to a phase, and I know it probably doesn't make sense now, and you probably think, what the heck, is that actually you realize that death isn't the big scary monster that we all are born to believe it is. Okay. Yes, Dan, I have been warned, and I have been protected, and I have been instructed, mostly when driving, actually, to be honest. I've been told to slow down. In the old days, I only do 3,000 miles a year these days. I hardly drive anywhere. And usually most of that is up and down the track here. So I'm doing about 15 miles an hour. But when I used to be in the corporate world, yes, thanks, Positive Intentions. Yeah, hospice as well. Hospice, that's the other thing. Dan, I used to drive a bit fast, and they would often tell me to back off or just slow down. And there would usually be some logical reason for it. But I would also ask them, I'm not advising this as a way to drive, but I would also ask them, is it safe to overtake? And it quite often would get a yes or a no. And again, quite often, not all the time. And that's the danger of it. Not all the time. You wouldn't always get an answer. But yeah, sometimes. There was something else that was different, not just the driving. I mean, gosh, there are various ways. And again, this is part of the point of living in step with the management. Okay, so we're going to have to start to pull it to a close, but I need to answer Lisa's question if she's still with us. But Benjamin plus 10, Lisa. So for you, the bodily feeling you experienced was a low blood sugar. Yeah, well, at the time, you see, I think because that was a very definite experience of something changing, Benjamin plus 10, seeing those stones, seeing that reality jump, I think that it took a lot of energy out of my physical being, and my blood sugars at the time were tending. They tended to do that. I would sort of suddenly go off the cliff of, suddenly get really, a horrible thing. It's called hypoglycemia, where you get, it's the opposite to diabetes, basically. But sorted that out. I don't get that anymore. Jumping, no, I haven't had anything else. No, I haven't. And in fact, I can't think that there's been, as far as I remember, no other specific example where that's actually happened that's been so blinking obvious. So that's that. Let me just go back to Lisa's question. I've lost it there, but what about the room downstairs in that house? Yeah, because I talked about how glorious that top room felt, the one that had light in it. The room beneath was actually, just as significant, but the room beneath had virtually no natural daylight, and it had been used as a storeroom. And it was, well, in fact, what I classically say, what I ordinarily say about it, is that it actually had the overflows, the toilet from 3 different toilets directed into the space. And the local neighborhood cats used to come in and use it as a litter tray, right? So the energy vibration in the room was awful downstairs, awful. And I mean, really horrible. And in fact, my mother-in-law didn't used to like going in there. And we had a childminder at one point, and quite frankly, she refused to go in there. But the point was that, because it felt so horrible, but the point was that this is why Jane was there. And this is why, because that was an example of geopathic stress. It was something that would, well, I mean, it had me and my wife been susceptible to it, which in a way we were. Let me go on. Where was I going? That sort of dark, heavy energy is what can be created in a house that is suffering from geopathic stress, because there were 2 earth energy lines crossing in that back room, and they were basically they were in a mess. Jane, the guardian energy personality that I was talking to, was there to help sort that out and to manage it and to manage the space. And so as we, I mean, you know, it's a long, we were there for 15 years. If we think about that room or that space out the back, those 2 rooms, when we first moved in, room down below, bloody awful, room at the top, lovely. Jane used to stay at the top for a long time. We worked on that room downstairs, the dark hole, and we did a lot of decorating. We did a lot of clearing as well, even in the early days when I didn't know what I was doing. I was just using the sage and all this sort of stuff, which could work to a certain extent. And then working with intention as well, and working and decorating and clearing it out, literally, physically. And we put a new, well, we took the floor up and just leveled it off and relayed it. And, you know, just gently and gradually over the years, the energy in that space got a lot better. If I had known what I know now, then I could have improved that space. And I could have asked upstairs to improve that space far quicker, because I know more about subtle energy now. I didn't know anything about it at the time, and that was the point. That was what was the catalyst for my spiritual awakening, moving into that house with the bloody awful room at the back. But, you know, it was a contrasting a space and a space of balance. But in the end, I used to meditate in that room, that downstairs room. it was so peaceful and calm. And actually, funnily enough, I was thinking about this only today, is that this room, this office, you can see it's got the old, well, I mean, if you ignore the pointing between the stonework, you know, this is 500, this part of the house. And this floor, you can't see it here, but it's a stone flagged floor, and it hasn't got any membrane under it. It literally is sitting on ground, on earth. And that is exactly what the floor was in that room in the other house. And it actually is lovely to have that physical connection in that way, not only to feel so close to the earth, literally, you know, it's that far away, basically. And there's no artificial membrane underneath this particular floor. This is the only room in the house that has the floor like this. All the others have got damp-proof courses, as you would expect in a house. And ironically, when we had the big floods, I know it's sidetracking a bit, but when we had the big floods summer a couple of years ago, this is one of the few rooms on the ground floor that didn't get wet, which is bizarre. But anyway, there you go. So, any last questions? And then we'll pull it to a close. And the next session on lives is February the 8th. So second week of February. Any last questions? I can't take too many, but we'll just rattle it off. Yeah, cool. Excellent. Lovely. Are you in the UK, Lisa, or are you in the States or somewhere else? Got to go. Bye, Jenny. Take care. Lisa, are you in the States or are you in the UK? Oh, rural France. Fantastic. Oh, wonderful. Anywhere near Sarlat or anything like that? I suppose that's very English, isn't it? Marvellous. Well, it's only a couple of weeks. Is it? No, maybe it's 3 weeks. 1, 2, 3. It's 3 weeks away. It's just the way it is at the moment. Then we'll have a couple of sessions in Feb. So we've only had the one in January, which is today, and we only had the one in December. So there you go. Good. Kansas City, excellent day. Oh, bless. Okay, Tom, look after yourself. Look after yourself. You and I talking tomorrow. Lots to talk about tomorrow. Don't be low about what's happened. Okay. All right, then. Very good. So blessings. Thank you very much, Mohammed. That's very kind. Blessings to you all, and see you in 3 weeks' time. And if you've got any questions or any comments, pop them in the stuff below. And also, actually, before you go, just click on the old thumbs up to show YouTube that you enjoyed it. Good. Always good to see you, David. JF, very, very good to see you, young sir. Look after yourselves in Canada. Nick, bless you. All right. Okay. So I'll be pressing the button. Just remember to hit the thumbs up if you haven't done so far already. Thank you very much indeed. I was about to say love you all. I can't say that. That just seems really rather weird. But thank you very much. Lovely. Take time. Have a great week to you too. Take care. All right. See you next time. There you go.